does Hideo Kojima get his ideas? In this podcast, we take a deep dive into his brain and shed light on his creative process. Hideo Kojima presents Brain Structure.
こんにちは、小島秀夫です、ポッドキャストプログラムHideo Kojima Presents、ブレインストラクチャー今回もスタートしました。
Hello, Hideo Kojima here with the podcast program Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure. Today, we are joined by another special guest from overseas. So my partner for today will be this guy in Los Angeles.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Keighley, producer of the Game Awards, and TGA, the Jeff's Answer on the Brain Structure podcast with Mr. Kojima. It's such an honor, as always, to be emceeing with you. And as we all know, a lot of you have been writing in with your guest requests in our mailbox. And this is someone that a lot of you have been requesting, and I'm sure you knew eventually he'd be on the podcast, and we're very excited to have him. We have Hideo's very good friend, Mr. Nicolas Refn, with us on the show. So let's dive right in to their talk about Heartman, Death Stranding, and their collaborations. Well, it's so great to have you with us here, Nick. Hideo, you guys have had a long friendship that we've followed both online and in real life, with you guys crisscrossing into each other's projects. But I wanted to start today with just a little bit of background on how you guys first met. Because I remember, I think you met for the first time in London, I think. Is that right, Nick?
ニコラスの僕映画のファンで
Well, I was a big fan of Nicholas's work and had always wanted to meet him. When Drive was released in Japan, I got in touch with the distribution agency and asked for Nicholas's contact information. So, I emailed him, and when I was on a business trip to Europe, we met up in London. Nicholas came all the way from Denmark. I think that was over 10 years ago.
I think that it was actually longer.
もっと前かな 10
You think so?
But around 10 or 11 years ago. I know that none of us had gray hair when we first saw each other.
でちょっと暗いレストランで
I remember we met up in a dimly lit restaurant. It was my first time meeting Nicholas, and yet, from that moment on, after just 20 or 30 minutes of talking, I felt like he was a childhood friend, someone I had known from ages ago.
What was your impression?
Similar. In a way, it was a very strange dinner we had. And because I'd been the distribution company that did Drive in Japan had reached out to me about Hideo wanting to connect. And so London seemed to be a good place for us to have dinner. And so when I came, I was 1, and Hideo and crew were about 5. And it was kind of intimate in a very poetic way, because it was all through, third voice because of translations. And there was this silence around us where we would just look at each other in between our talks. And I think that's where we connected. For some reason, there was, as Hideo said, there was a kindred spirit between us. And we were both, ironically, at very pivotal moments in our lives, career-wise as well. Hideo's life was going to radically change very soon, and so was mine. So we met at a certain time where there was a connective tissue that was like, we will always remember this moment, because when we left the restaurant, both our lives changed radically, but we also continued to exchange the evolution between us. So it was like we were in each other's conscience constantly, because we were both evolving, and then you can say we even had similar personal lives, and we had similar amount of children. He had boys, I had girls. He had a wife, I had a wife. And we were very much like, that's really all we we do is we go home or we work. And I kind of felt from then on that, and even age-wise, twins at birth, separated, find each other again.
そうです。その後ロスであったり、
Yes.
デンマークであったり、
And after that day, we've met up in places all over the world like Los Angeles, Denmark, Japan. We don't get to see each other often, but I feel that I have a very special relationship with Nicolas. I have many creators that I'm close to, but I'm most connected with Nicolas, I think. He sends me messages all the time too, but it's usually not text-based. It's mostly pictures or emojis or videos. We're like elementary school kids, just going back and forth like that. I don't really tell people this, but about 3 years ago, I was ill for a little while. And during that time, Nicolas constantly sent me messages of encouragement. He even sent me a video. In it, he was like, "Keep your spirits up, Hideo." I'm really grateful. He's a true friend.
Wow, that's so special. I mean, you guys clearly have this sort of kinship. As you said, Nick, it feels like you are sort of separated at birth. When you first met Hideo, I don't know how much you knew about his work, but obviously over time you grew to know more about it. But what fascinates you about Hideo and his work, Nick? Because I know you've been interested in sort of the gaming world and trying to understand more about that. Hideo obviously took a great liking to your work theatrically and in television and whatnot. But what was it about Hideo's work as you looked into it that impressed you?
I think that, obviously what he had created in his past was very iconic. And we're both child of pop culture in a way, we're both kind of, we grew up with, the evolution of technology at various stages. So first and foremost, I think it's the act of creativity that connects us, and that it's about expressing. And we have obviously at the core a different canvas, yet it's a very similar canvas philosophically. So even though we come from two different backgrounds, we see very similar on the actual process. And because of Hideo, I obviously got to understand a lot more and intrigued by what the gaming world was evolving. And you could kind of say, because my world of film and television has really stagnated in many ways, and it's not very aggressive in its evolution. It's very repetitive. So I have also been, in a way, wandering in the desert, trying to figure out, well, what is the canvas of the future? And I think that, having been inspired by Hideo, the idea of gaming is the only right now multimedia form that continues to evolve and build and give opportunities. So I'm very, it's like you're a student of someone else in a way. I kind of feel that the inspiration comes from there, that I'm very inspired by what he's doing and obviously seeing. And coming on as Heartman was a real eye-opener as well, just technically. I always felt that, in a way, I was playing Hideo Kojima in his own game. Yeah. So I felt very honored to have that kind of aura around me. But I think that we're very good together because the worlds that we come from are obviously becoming more connected to each other. His world is just more advancing, where mine is stagnating.
Tell us a little bit more about the Heartman character. I remember actually I was in San Diego one time when you were getting scanned, because today I was also scanning me. We were doing that for my little cameo, but you had a major role in this game. Hideo, maybe tell us why did you want to put Nicolas in Death Stranding? Was that always part of the plan, or how did you come up with this idea?
So
the theme of Death Stranding is connection. And so I wanted to use connections to bring the game to life. Same goes for Guillermo and Norman too. In the back of my mind, I always thought to cast a game using my connections. And I thought Hartman was the perfect role for Nicholas. He only did a scan, but it's not an easy task. He may be a director, but he can also act. So it went really well, actually.
Yeah, I mean, for you, Nick, I know I'm sure it must have been quite interesting to trust Hideo with this opportunity of bringing you as yourself kind of into this game, but acting and playing this sort of character. What was your expectation of? Did Hideo tell you much about the character? I mean, obviously you had done sort of the scanning for it, and probably didn't know quite what was going to happen. But what was your impression of who Hartman was?
Well, it was obviously very clear to me, as I said earlier, that I was playing him, and in a way, my contribution was the physicality. In a way, it's you project yourselves onto other components. I mean, It was fascinating being when we were doing the actual scanning itself and digitalization, and it was a real eye-opener of, again, like, okay, what is the future going to look like of entertainment? And this is really where things are happening. But in terms of the character itself, he told me the name and a little bit about the background, how it functions, how the character functions. But at the same time, when you are a creator, you just need to create. And I'm there essentially as eye candy. But I think that because of our relationship, it felt very comfortable, of more like giving myself to him like clay, and he could then mold me afterwards into what he wanted me to become, and in the future will continue to evolve. And it's for me, it's kind of exciting not knowing what's going to happen, but just know that I exist in the universe, and more surprised and intrigued to see what's going to be coming next.
Oh, well, yes, we're all intrigued to wonder. But Hartman as a character, Hideo, tell us a bit about the conceptualization of that. Did you really build the character based on Nick, or how did this character come into sort of the world of Death Stranding?
いろんなキャラクターが出てくるんですけども
Well, there are many characters in the game, but most of them have some sort of connection with the world of the dead. And it's said that the weight of the soul is 21 grams. At first, I thought of a character who can go back and forth between the world of the living and the dead. And this person travels back and forth in search of his family, and that happens every 21 minutes. When I thought about this character, I instantly thought of Nicholas. So from then on, this imaginary character of mine began to take shape by mixing parts of Nicholas into him.
ニコラさんはインテリでオタクなんで
Nicholas is an intelligent type and also an otaku, which is something we have in common, I think. He is well versed in movies, books, music, and art, so I incorporated all those parts while imagining Nicholas. And well, Nicholas has fans all over the world. It was quite risky to use him as a character because there are many people who highly respect him. So in the midst of creating the character of Hartman, I had Nicholas take a look at it throughout the process. And the thing that made me the happiest was the fact that Nicholas really liked it. And after releasing the game, Hartman was quite popular. There are lots of characters in Death Stranding, but Hartman ranks like first or second place in terms of popularity. Higgs is quite popular too, but I was personally relieved to see these results.
Yeah, no, I think everyone responded to his story, and this concept of, Hartman is such a unique character, right? This idea that his heart stops, beating every 21 minutes. It's such an original concept for a character. Nick, do you remember when Hideo first told you about that concept and how this tied into the character?
I mean, it was fascinating to hear, and obviously I was like, great. I mean, it's genius. But what I thought was more, in a way, and it's about when you cross the barrier and and kind of exchange ideas or become a vessel for, like, in my situation, for Heartman, for Hideo. Because what essentially was the essence of Heartman is family. And I know that both, you can kind of say me and Hideo are very romantics. You know, we are very idealists in certain terms, like modern day samurais. And so I think that what was more exciting to me at the end was really getting to become a component of what, or a part of something that actually is very, very, it's a very mirror between us, because we are very much devoted to family and family values and the existence of our family and how important our families are to each other. So I didn't felt I was just, quote unquote, you know, being a character in a great game, but I was essentially being, in a way, the essence, the core creative narrative that would spring everything else into motion, even though it works on a more, you know, sidelined narrative-wise, as I am part of the universe. But, you know, someone giving themselves to you, like Hideo would say, I want you to play Heartman, this is who Heartman is. I was like, I want to give myself to that the same way that you are honoring me playing you. So it became like a very intimate conversation where I would just listen to Hideo telling me, and I would then become his alter ego in a way. And I think that kind of exchange was, for me, what made it exciting to kind of dive into it.
And you've obviously returned the favor with Hideo appearing in some of your projects. I know he'll be in your upcoming Netflix show, Copenhagen Cowboy, which we're excited to check out in January when that arrives. Why did you decide to put Hideo in some of your work?
Well, I think that after having done Heartman, it just became like almost an exchange of honor. Like I want, and because the parts that Hideo have done both in Tool to Die Young is in a way disconnected to the narrative of the show, but is a real extension of myself, my own presence in the actual creativity. And when it came to Copenhagen Cowboy, not revealing too much, but, the connected tissue to Hideo is, again, in a way, he's playing me in the show. And so that's where I felt that there was because there is it's very intimate to give your identity or your heart, quote unquote, to someone else, to be that, to represent that. Obviously with some of the actors that I've worked on my films, whether it's Mads Mikkelsen or Ryan Gosling, that very much project my alter egos. We're still very different from as people, but with Hideo, there is something very easy between us because we are so connected on a spiritual level. So I felt for my show here, Copenhagen Cowboy, that he would be like the supreme spiritual force.
And how is Hideo as an actor?
Well, I'm not an actor, so I'm just kind of there for presence. I was also interested in seeing Nicolas's job site, so I really enjoyed that. I've played the role of an assassin before too. I was curious about seeing how he works and how he directs, so it was a lot of fun.
And I think that we had a real, it was interesting because obviously when I was being scanned for Death Stranding, that technical process is kind of stops, and at a certain point after a day, you're done, and then everything is captured. But with the Tool to Die Young, I remember that when Hideo came on set and, we took one take and and 2 takes. And I think there was this like, okay, I guess we're done. It's like, no, we're going to go on for another 10 hours, doing the same thing. So, and he was great about it, because I remember we wrapped around like 2 a.m. and he had to get up at 6 a.m. to go and work on his game. But it was a great kind of giving oneself to the process. And when we did Copenhagen Cowboy, we did it through social components remote, because his character is remote from where the other characters are talking to him. He's very good. I will say he's very consistent, and he's very, very, he's very, charismatic. And I think we could do a great, comedy together, because it essentially would just consist of me and him sitting looking at each other with a voiceover,
I'd watch that. So tell us a bit about Copenhagen Cowboy, Nick, right? Everyone's very curious about it. We know it's now coming in early next year. We're going to get to see it. We know it's you filmed it in your home country, Denmark, set in Denmark. Tell us a bit about what can we expect from it?
Well, a hell of a good time. I basically, because the pandemic and, which was very, devastating in many ways, we got stuck here in Denmark, and I didn't know what really to do and so forth. And my part of the industry, which is obviously film and television, I've had, as I said, a very challenging relationship to, because I do feel that there's an enormous stagnation in it creatively. So I was, pretty depressed, and I just suddenly came up with this idea to do a show about a character called Mew, and she was going to be an extension of One Eye, which was Mads Mikkelsen in Valhalla Rising, and Drive, Ryan Gosling's character, and Vitaya, who's Lieutenant in Only God Forgives. I wanted to kind of revisit that character, and I created her as a female, and that really started kind of becoming very exciting to me. And then Netflix was around, and they were very eager to get into business, and I was very nervous because working with conglomerates can be very challenging, because with Hideo and myself, there is this very much like, we can only do what we do, and we have to be left alone doing it. Otherwise, somebody else should do it. So we're very pragmatic, and I certainly was with this show. But Netflix ended up being a terrific partner, and a wonderful relationship started there. It was defined as Netflix winning Refn moving forward. But yeah, I wanted to make a show that kind of encumbers everything that I desire, but also obviously challenge the notion of what is the future of narrative. The idea of commercial narrative being more and more uninteresting, and niche being the new mainstream. This was a great place to kind of set the stage for I guess, my own version of a superhero. And I shot it all in Denmark, which I never expected I would do. So that has been I've been very rejuvenated lately, creatively, because of that process. We had a great premiere in Venice. And then I just did a movie with Prada called Touch of Crude, which is a further kind of evolution of my own kind of going up against, commercial narrative, and what I think there's, in a way, much more openness to what the future will look like creatively. So I've been in Milan for the last 4 weeks, all of September into October, shooting a film with them. And that's been, again, enormously fascinating creatively, and the collaboration between us. I helped them with their fashion show and so forth. But out of that came the idea of doing this film together. That's going to premiere next year. So I've been excited, in a way. I felt I've wandered the desert for a long time, blind, and I've come out of it now, excited to see and create for the future. Life is short. Try to have a good time as long as you can.
With good friends like Hideo.
Well, what more do you need?
Do you think your collaboration will continue, Hideo, moving forward with Nick? I mean, what are the types of things that you want to work with him on? You obviously guest in his shows, he's guesting your games, but do you think you guys will do more together as you explore other, mediums you want to play with, or Nick with games and things?
そう、常になんか一緒にやりましょうっていうことは言ってるので。
Yeah, we're always talking about doing something together. And as Nicholas just said, life is short. And I want to do something that will change the world. More than a revolution, but something like that. Nicholas and we have a very different approach to how we create things or how we do storytelling. But at the core of our creativity, we have many similarities. Like how we want to do something new that no one has done before. So we build inspirations off of each other, and I like to do something together that will change the world, change the future, and maybe even change the past.
Ooh, interesting idea. You talk a lot, Nick, about the idea of narrative changing and commercial narrative, but also just the medium is changing, and Netflix, as you said, is kind of pushing in new directions. Are you intrigued by the interactive world and some of the possibilities of using, real-time 3D and CG? I mean, you've done a lot. You're a master of kind of in-camera, visuals and lighting and things like that. But are you intrigued to play more in sort of the virtual world now?
Oh, absolutely. I find it incredibly intoxicating. And it's a world I know very little about. For example, my brain doesn't function very well with understanding technology. I know 2 + 2 = 4, but that's about it. So I'm like, I suck everything to me, but I don't always understand it, which obviously I've always liked to create in worlds where I don't really know anything, because it automatically forces you to look at everything in a different perspective. It's like whenever you make, in my situation, something, you have to erase the past completely, just exterminate it in order to create something new. Like almost both knowledge is great to create the future, but it can also be a hindrance, especially if you have success, you can very quickly fall into the trap of repeating it. So the idea of making something with the ignorance of not knowing, I've always found very intriguing, because then the act of creativity itself becomes the main, it becomes a dominating factor, which is what it really is all about. I mean, what we do, Hideo and I, is that we create. And if we didn't create, I don't know what we would do. I don't really see us doing anything else. So the act of creativity is first and foremost what's ahead of us. But for me, the way the evolution of technology, I find very fascinating, and I'm very optimistic about the future. I think that there is a lot of, we're still at a very early stage. I always say, we can compare it to evolution of the wheel. We've maybe got the wheel in place of technology and creativity. Just wait till we get to the airplane. Like there's so many exciting components ahead of us. But as Hideo said, one of the things we also need to do is deconstruct the norm in order to continue to challenge the future. Because if you don't, we very quickly again stagnate. And then what's the purpose? Then the point becomes obsolete, where if you create to inspire, which is what creativity is essentially is to act 100% as yourself and inspiring, then there is something very beautiful in that.
That's a great note to end this episode on, I think. Hideo, any final thoughts on what we're going to see from Heartman in the future? Have we seen the last of him, or you think he might appear at some point in the future in something you do?
ニコラス的にはハートマンでスピンオフ作ってくれってずっと言われてるんです。
Well, Nicholas keeps telling me to create a Hartman spin-off, or create a Hartman figure. And Hartman is really popular, so maybe he'll be back. We'll see. The only thing Nicholas and I can do for the world is create things. We aren't capable of doing anything else, so we'll probably keep making things until we die. And as Nicholas was saying, creating things is renouncing the past and exterminating your former self in order to make something new. I don't have many people in my life who will say things like this, but Nicholas is always honest with me. So yes, I would like to make something new with him someday.
Well, you guys have had an incredible partnership so far with the worlds colliding, and I have no doubt there'll be much more in the future. Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Nick.
Absolutely.
It's now time to wrap up the episode.
That was such a great episode. It's clear that Hideo, you and Nick have such a great collaboration and mutual respect for each other. So it was awesome to hear about your ongoing collaborations, which I'm sure are going to continue. So thank you again, Nick, for joining us on the podcast live from Denmark, where he lives. And don't forget, Brain Structure's mailbox is still open, so please continue sending messages our way, and any messages or questions for Hideo, your thoughts on the podcast and guests or topics you would like us to cover, just let us know. The link to the message form can be found in the episode description.
Please
look forward to next week's episode of Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure.
さようなら。
Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure is a production by Spotify Studios in association with Kojima Productions and Fam Inc. TGA, the Jeff's Answer MC, Jeff Keighley. Narrator, Owen Maki. Music, Silent Poets. Visual design, Mechikuro. Producer, Hiro Furuki. Director, Kohei Takizawa. Executive producer at Spotify, Asami Sekine. Special thanks to Kojima Productions, Ayako Terashima, Masafumi Chiba, Miki Suga, and Aki Saito. Hosted by Hideo Kojima.
Did you enjoy the talk with Death Stranding's Heartman, Nicolas Winding Refn? I really felt the bond between them. Heartman is such a popular character in Death Stranding, so I enjoyed learning more about the character. Coming up next week, a special about the master of the film music, Ennio Morricone. Hideo will select his favorite tracks too. Don't miss it!
Where does Hideo Kojima get his ideas? In this podcast, we take a deep dive into his brain and shed light on his creative process. Hideo Kojima presents brain structure.
はい、こんにちは、小島秀夫です。ポッドキャストプログラム、Hideo Kojima Presents、Brain Structure.
Hello, I'm Hideo Kojima, here with the podcast program Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure. Here with me is my partner for this episode.
Brain's here. I'm looking forward to talking with you today.
Yes, it's been a while.
It certainly has. Thank you for having me again. The sound studio is great, by the way.
今日はですね、コジプロ、
Today we're celebrating the new Kojima production studio.
Congratulations.
コジプロの
Thank you. So this is Kojima Productions' in-house sound studio, and this is our first commemorative recording.
The sound quality in your voice. It's so much better.
そんなことないでしょ。
I'm sure that's not true.
But this facility really is amazing.
もうちょいほんまはね。
I wanted to make it a little more specialized, but we didn't have the budget. Like, we couldn't make a complete Foley studio.
You wanted a Foley studio?
まあ、フォーリーのスタジオを作るとフォーリーアーティストがいる
Well,
ので。
to make a Foley studio, you need a Foley artist. But we don't staff anybody like that, so we couldn't. Ideally, I wanted to be able to do everything in the studio. That's the best use of time in terms of productivity.
I see. So right now, we're in the recording studio?
これアフレコ、
This is the recording studio.
What other rooms do you have here?
スキャンとか、あと YouTube のスタジオとか。
We have a scan room, a studio for recording like YouTube videos, and a green room for artists and talents.
A Hollywood-style green room.
あれごと式なんですか？
Is it Hollywood style? Honestly, I don't think we needed to make those mirrors so tall. Why do they go all the way up? There aren't any 3-meter tall people.
True, but they did seem like mirrors that actresses would use. It feels so Hollywood-esque.
まあ、気持ちの問題なんで。
Well, it's the thought that counts, I guess. People may not use them, but I want them to feel cared for when they're here.
You really get that feeling in the green room. So today is our first recording in the new studio. For today's episode, I heard that we are going to be focusing on a particular artist. Who would that be?
はい。エンニオ・モリコーネさん。
Yes, we will be talking about Ennio Morricone today. Unfortunately, he passed away, but I wanted to feature him because the documentary film, Ennio, the Maestro, is going to be released in Japan. I believe it's already playing overseas, but in Japan, it will be released in January.
It will be released on January 13th, which is a day after this podcast is aired. But of course, it depends on when you are listening to the podcast, so it's probably releasing soon or has already been released.
この、映画はですね、ジョゼッペ・トリナトーレさんが
This movie was directed by Giuseppe Tornatore, and actually a book of conversations between Tornatore and Morricone was published too. Do Books published the Japanese translated version.
They talked to Morricone when he was still alive then.
そうですね、はい。この映画もそうですけど。
Yes, exactly. I think everyone should check it out, along with the documentary too, of course. Everyone loved Morricone. I took it really hard when he passed away.
I think that many of our listeners are already familiar with him, but let me briefly introduce Morricone. He started working as a film music composer in the early 60s. Some of his most popular works include the worldwide hit A Fistful of Dollars version 2, which we'll be discussing later. Also, the main theme song of Cinema Paradiso. Additionally, he also has ties with Japan and worked on things like the historical taiga drama Musashi.
まあ、日本でも人気ですから。
He is popular in Japan too.
Yes, he is. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2020 at the age of 91.
はい、残念でしたけど。
Yes, it was very sad. I really want everyone to watch this documentary. It will make Morricone fans bawl their eyes out. People who don't know about Morricone should also watch it. You'll be like, he wrote this song? And there will at least be like 10 songs that everyone knows, even if you aren't familiar with him. I want everyone to watch it. You'll see that he started music when he was a child, and he used to play the trumpet. Then he got into musical arrangements and film music and later went on to Hollywood.
So you were able to understand his life story.
そうですね、それを
Yes. And Tornatore pieces everything together from his perspective, so it's a really good movie.
There are many famous people on the cast list too, like Clint Eastwood, for example.
そうです、そうです。
Yes, that's right.
まあ、タランティーノとか。
There's Quentin Tarantino and also Pier Paolo Pasolini, Dario Argento, Bernardo Bertolucci, and Hans Zimmer too. With Hans Zimmer, you'll probably notice elements of Morricone at the core of his music. You can tell when you listen to Morricone's songs. One of the things I find really interesting about Morricone's time is that one composer will be responsible for making the score for the entire movie.
Do you mean in Morricone's prime?
前世とかその時代に
More so during that time period in general, rather than just Morricone in his prime. With film music, one person composed and directed the music to match the movie. But that takes a lot of time. And once visual effects were implemented, they had to make music with no visuals yet because they couldn't wait around for editing to be completed before the music. It becomes impossible for one person to do it all. And so that's when Hans Zimmer invented the concept of creating with a team and digitalized the process before doing live recordings. So Morricone, who changed the film music industry, influenced Hans Zimmer, who in turn changed the industry himself. So Hans' testimony is very interesting.
Interesting. So he talks about that in the film?
そういうですね。あと
Yes, he does. And various other musicians make appearances as well.
That's right. Pat Metheny, too. Mr. Kojima, when did you first encounter Morricone's work?
テレビでマカロニウエスタン
On TV. Do you know what spaghetti western is?
Yes, I do.
黒沢さんの用心棒をモチーフに
Well, Akira Kurosawa's film, Yojimbo, became an inspiration for the movie, A Fistful of Dollars. And I had watched some Western films before, but I was the perfect age at the time to become obsessed with these spaghetti westerns, which were shot in Italy but made to look like it wasn't. So my heroes were actors like Clint Eastwood, Franco Nero, and Lee Van Cleef, and I fell in love with Morricone's music, which was used in those films.
You really got into the music right away?
これはすぐ掘りますね。多分
Yes, I did. The people who appear in this film, they're all a bit unique. Morricone uses all sorts of sound like the whistling and the weird guitar sounds. And he incorporates that into melodious music that I think really appeal to Japanese people. Everyone got their start from here, including people like Tarantino.
All the spaghetti westerns.
そうですね。
Yes, exactly. And I think now would be a good time to listen to a bit of music.
Okay, on this Spotify podcast, premium members can listen to the songs in full, while free members can listen to 30 seconds of the song. If you want to hear the full song, please join as a premium member.
はい。まず荒野の用心棒。
Yes, let's start with the song A Fistful of Dollars, version 2. Again, this movie used Kurosawa's Yojimbo as a motif. It has Clint Eastwood in it. When you hear that whistling, you'll recognize it. After that, we'll listen to For a Few Dollars More. This one is really fun. I think everyone will recognize it as soon as they hear it. Everyone knows these two songs. Let's take a listen.
I can fight.
If you take a step back and think about it, it doesn't sound like it really has anything to do with Western.
いやいや。
But without this music, I don't think those movies would have become so popular worldwide. The soundtrack sold like crazy at the time.
Incredible. When you listen to it now, it seems natural that they added this music to that scene, but the fact that they went in with it is amazing.
モリコーネってタイプライターの音を
Morricone worked on contemporary music and did new stuff like using typewriter sounds in his music too. I mean, his melodies are wonderful and really catchy.
I see.
で、まあこの2本は
Even people who don't really like movies may have seen these two films. After For a Few Dollars More came, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Personally, I think this is the best one out of all spaghetti western films. People who aren't familiar with any spaghetti westerns should start by watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
They should start with that?
これですね。
Yes, and if they don't like it, well, I don't think there is anybody who wouldn't like it. They spent a lot on the budget for it. Anyways, after that, you should watch Once Upon a Time in the West starring Charles Bronson as the lead. This movie is also fantastic, and the music at the beginning is especially great. There are these men waiting to ambush Charles Bronson's character at the train station. There are buzzing sounds from flies, the wind, and other environmental noises. It's not music, but the use of these sounds are really effective. It's a scene that uses sound in a crazy way. But today, we're not listening to that. Rather, we're going to listen to the ending song. It's called Once Upon a Time in the West, Final. Please enjoy.
こういう曲はモリコーネ得意なんですよね。
These kinds of songs were Morricone's specialty, using female vocals in sort of an opera-like fashion. I don't really know how to put it. He really embodied film music as a whole. He changed the film music industry alongside changing music itself. Movies and music existed separately, but he made them into one entity. That's why I want to emulate him and combine film and video games into one.
Morricone and his work is one of your origins? Your starting point?
ちょっと普通じゃないですよ、僕の彼。
Well, it's really quite abnormal what I feel for Morricone. He has many fans, but it almost goes beyond just being a fan. He's like our master. That's the level he's at. Morricone started in Italy and ended up working on big titles in Hollywood too. But he did a lot of B movies.
He worked on whatever he could get his hands on?
どんどんやってます。
He did whatever he could. I was going to talk about this a bit later, but yeah, so even though he worked on some big Hollywood hits, he had never gotten an Academy Award. And then Tarantino showed up and brought him back into the business. Morricone won an honorary award at first, but he ultimately received an official Academy Award for his work on a Tarantino film. So I really think Tarantino did great work there. And Morricone actually had a music master. At the time, though, film music wasn't very highly thought of. It was the same as when I started making games. So he was never really acknowledged by his master. But he continued to immerse himself in the film music industry. And he wanted to win an Academy Award but couldn't for the longest time. And eventually, he won, and people recognized him all around the world.
The Times finally caught up?
はい。で、僕もだから
Yes, in my case, there was a time when people doubted the legitimacy of the industry. But finally, my work has started to become acknowledged. So I feel like my life is following a similar path to Morricone's, especially after having watched the documentary. It made me cry. And although it's said that Morricone wasn't acknowledged, thanks to him and his work, many creators have been born from his influence, and those creators brought Morricone back into the limelight. That's why the story is so beautiful, and the documentary too. This is an Italian movie, so they use some Dario Argento songs that I like. That music is really like sound effects. It doesn't have a melody. He worked with a band on some experimental music and whatnot. And let's not forget the film, Sacco and Vanzetti, which I really like.
これ実はそれメタルギアソリッドで何回か使ってるんです。
I referenced it a lot in Metal Gear Solid. Snake and Otacon were really similar to Sacco and Vanzetti. So I was going to make it so that in the end, since these two become fugitives, they are made to stand trial. I was considering an ending like that, but everyone told me to stop because they didn't like it. But I really wanted to use that song in a scene like that. At the time, I had Harry Gregson Williams arrange a song from Sacco and Vanzetti and use that as the ending for Metal Gear Solid 4.
You did?
で、その後 MGS5 の
And for the opening of Metal Gear Solid 5, Ground Zeroes, I used the original version by Joan Baez because I thought it was the best to use the original. I think Metal Gear fans will have heard this before, but let's listen.
これ死刑台のメロディーはジョン
Sacco and Vanzetti features two songs by Joan Baez. The other song is really good too, but this is a song about triumph and victory. The Roman numeral V for 5 and MGS5 also stands for victory, so it's a bit of wordplay.
I see. So the ending of 4 connects to the opening of 5.
はい。この曲大好きなんですよ、子供の時。
Yes, I love this song. I listened to it when I was a kid and even recorded it off the radio.
Radio recordings, so nostalgic.
でね、これ本当のこと言うと、
But to be honest, I had forgotten about this song for a while. And when I was making Metal Gear 4, I went to Tower Records and they were playing the song covered by another artist. And that's when it brought back memories. I was like, I listened to this song a long time ago. So I looked for the CD, bought it, and realized I wanted to put it into the game. It was fate that we reunited.
And coincidentally, right when you were making the game too.
はい。で、まあ彼、ものすごい
Yes. And well, Morricone worked on a lot of soundtracks, like around 500 or so.
500? That's unbelievable.
で B 級 A 級
He worked on hit movies, B movies, science fiction, occult films, and so on and so forth. There's this Italian-American animal thriller film called Orca. The song from that is amazing too. I own the soundtrack. We're not going to play that today though.
That's too bad.
The movie wasn't great, but the music sure was.
サントラは全部ある
I've collected all his soundtracks.
That's great.
で僕エクソシスト
Also, the scariest movie in the whole world for me is The Exorcist. I've only ever watched it once. But I was able to watch Exorcist 2 multiple times because it's not scary at all. John Berman directed it and Morricone provided the music. A beautiful melody plays while Linda Blair fights off locusts.
全然怖ない
It's really not scary.
The music doesn't make it scary?
音楽がね、まあ
Well, in the first movie, the song was Tubular Bells, composed by Mike Oldfield. But the second one was done by Morricone, and he created a song with a really emotional melody. And it's not scary, so I was able to watch Exorcist 2 many times.
I see. That just shows how music really changes your impression of something.
で、まあ、日本でも
In Japan, too, Morricone did the music for Masuo Ikeda's movie, Dedicato alla Mare Egeo, which translates to Dedicate to the Aegean Sea. Morricone's song for that is really nice. Oh, and the movie The Thing by John Carpenter, who I really like. Morricone worked on that too. The whole time is just like,
ドンドンドゥンドゥン
Oh, it's not a song?
no, it's just the bass part and it goes,
ドンドンドンそれだけなんですよ
I thought that was really cool.
The choices he made were really interesting. When he took on a job, he made music with beautiful melodies, but also sound effect-like music as well.
いやまあ音色
Yes, and his choice of timbre and melody lines are amazing. He really was a man of many talents, and he was a fast worker too.
I mean, 500 film scores. You would have to work hard to get all that done. Why not play another song?
でまたセルジオ
Okay, yes. This is when Sergio Leone called him back, this time for Once Upon a Time in America. You know this one, right? The one that goes,
ペペペペペペペペペってやつはね
yes, the movie with Robert De Niro. But when they play that,
ペペペペかけたらかっこ悪いんですよ
it just doesn't seem cool.
Oh, really?
このデボラのテーマ
So instead, let's listen to Deborah's theme.
もう泣けますよねこれだけでね
Just the song alone can make you cry. You don't even need the visuals. This is similar to the style of Cinema Paradiso.
True, and even so, he didn't get an Academy Award. Perhaps he was too far ahead of his time.
どうなんですかねまあイタリア人だからっていうのは
I don't even know. Maybe being Italian played a big part in that.
Ah, yes, well, compared to now, the Academy Awards were much more America-centric.
でまあ有名なミッション
Yes, but I mean he was famous for his works and stuff like The Mission and The Untouchables. Everybody knows those songs. He was nominated many times but couldn't win. He was always very conscious of that, and I think his master was probably not very fond of film music. Even so, Morricone decided to pursue that path. And he worked on Hollywood films and was nominated many times, but just could not win. I think he was always conflicted about that. So I'm sure he wanted to be acknowledged for it, especially by his master. And then Tarantino came along.
Yes, he did.
彼の曲を使い
Tarantino used Morricone's music in Inglourious Basterds. And that was well received, and in 2007, he got an honorary award at the Academy Awards. And then after that, Tarantino recruited him again for The Hateful Eight, and that's when he finally won his first competitive Academy Award for Best Original Score.
So it was his first true award, not just an honorary award. He was already over 80 years old at the time. That was in 2015. So then his work came to be recognized, but I think it still comes down to the film Cinema Paradiso.
そうですね
Yes, I agree. All the songs in that are masterpieces. There aren't many soundtracks where all the songs in it are winners.
You can listen to just the soundtrack on its own.
まあこれもその
Yes, and at the time, Tornatore was not well known. So, I'm surprised Morricone took on the job. That's what makes Morricone so amazing.
It's probably thanks to having worked on a lot of B movies that he was able to have these connections.
でちょっと心折れたのか
Yes, and this was right around the time he was back in Italy for a bit after perhaps feeling a little discouraged. And then he got the offer from Tornatore. I don't know the details, but the documentary showed that Morricone felt really good while working on this film.
I see.
でそれがあるからあの曲ですよね。
And because of that, we have that song from this film. He continued to have a good relationship with Tornatore after that, so they worked on many movies together. Morricone did the music for most of his films. I love The Legend of 1900. Everyone should buy that soundtrack.
Yes, please buy it. Or rather, listen to it on Spotify.
あ、そうだ。スポティアあると思う。
Oh yes, I think it is on Spotify. There are many we couldn't play for you today, but please check them out. Like Orca and Exorcist 2. It's not scary, I promise.
It's beautiful,
何をしとんねんっていうくらい美しいですから。
It's unbelievably beautiful.
even though it's for a scary movie.
いやもう全然怖いです。
It's not scary at all. At the end, the locusts come to attack, and that saint-like music plays and Linda Blair waves her arms and the locusts die. Anyways, back to Cinema Paradiso. All the songs are masterpieces, but especially the ending song, Love Theme. This is a theme song for the end of the movie, when the main character receives a film reel and he sets it up at the movie theater, watches it alone, and cries.
That was Cinema Paradiso Love Theme.
はい、他にも名曲揃い。
Yes, there are so many famous songs from that movie. With a beautiful soundtrack like this, it doesn't matter what the film is. It can go with
め
anything.
ちゃかと思いますけど
It doesn't matter what the film is because the music will make everything okay.
僕もね、
Yeah, I wanted to ask him to work on game music, but unfortunately that dream didn't come true.
But there are many people who have been influenced by Morricone's philosophy and will continue to carry on his legacy, including yourself, Mr. Kojima.
まあ間違いなく
Well, he certainly opened doors for future generations in the film music industry.
Well, we talked a lot about Morricone today, but let's not forget the movie. The documentary is titled Ennio, and Mr. Kojima's comment is included on the official website. Let me read the comment. Morricone was a great maestro who was called to the film industry, epitomized loneliness in his compositions, resisted opposition, and inspired many followers. You will be moved to tears when watching his life story. If he was the personification of film music, then this documentary is a timeless soundtrack of his performance and the melody of his life. There will never be another composer like Morricone.
ちょっとね、もう彼みたいな人出てこない。
There really won't be another person like him, epitomizing loneliness in his compositions. I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, his wife was his biggest supporter, but there was a lot of backlash at first, with people not understanding his decision to work on film music. And yet, he continued to resist, and many people listened to his work, and he gained many followers.
Without him, film music may have been something composers did just on the side. It may have remained a rather low-status occupation.
それだけじゃないですね。
And it's not just that. His music inspired people to become creators, including people like movie directors. So it wasn't just about the music. His existence encouraged young people out in the world. There aren't many people with that ability.
Very true. He influenced people in many fields, not just composers. He influenced you too, right, Mr. Kojima? Are there any scenes in particular that left an impression on you? I think there may be quite a few.
いやもうちょっと自分に重ねますよね。やっぱり。
Well, I really feel like our stories overlap. Nowadays, people praise the game industry, but when I started, it was sort of looked down upon. I didn't even tell people I was making games. And so I feel my perspective is very similar to Morricone's. And seeing how he continued on, even amongst that hardship, I can see myself in him.
In other words, you'll continue to create games having inherited Morricone's way of life?
映画音楽。
Uh-huh. Yes.
In Japan, this documentary will start on January 13th, 2023. For those listening to the podcast on the day of its release, that is tomorrow. For those listening a bit later, it's already out. Please go watch it in theaters.
はい。本もあります。
Yes, and there's a book too. The movie is a bit long, but please watch it.
It's a long movie?
はい。 これたまらんと思いますね。
Yes, but you will definitely be hooked.
You can find more details on the official website for the film. Find it by searching for the title, Ennio.
ということで早くもエンディングのお時間
It's about time to wrap up now. Today we've discussed the master composer Morricone. Wait, I messed
違
up.
うわ
That's my line.
早くもお時間となりました。
It's time to wrap up.
Yes, today we talked about Mr. Ennio Morricone and his way of life. I was surprised to learn just how much of a role he played in your path to becoming a creator.
そうです。だから僕
Yes, and so I think I'll keep at it until I'm 91 years old as well.
Yes, most definitely. Continue on making things forever and ever.
ね
With games, though, well, music is just so powerful. When you hear a melody, you can recall certain memories. It makes me want to make music. Lately, it's all I've been thinking about. But making music is something that I can't do at all. So I've been thinking about how I can go about doing that.
Are there any Morricone philosophies in Death Stranding 2?
ありますありますけど、ね、
Yes, there are. I can't compose my own music, so I have to have musicians' cooperation, though.
So when you give directions for the music, do you ask for a little bit of Morricone in the mix?
ですね、音響効果の一種なんで
Well, I think of music as part of the acoustics. Sound effects and music, they both have to be optimized. If you force a song in somewhere, it will ruin everything.
I see.
最適なんですけど
It has to be optimized, but it must also stand alone as great soundtrack, so you can enjoy it both ways. Sometimes you buy the soundtrack and it's not so great.
Yes, it works only because it's part of the film.
これもうちょっと
Yeah, and you're like, I can't listen anymore. I think the Morricone philosophy is to make music that can be seen as music alone, appreciated separately from the film and something that can stand on its own. So in a game, I want there to be music that can stand alone and away from the game and be passed down to the next generation. That's the ideal.
Like after you hear sounds or music from a game, suddenly you are flooded with the memories of playing the game or of particular scenes.
場面とかその人の人生あの時こうやった
Yeah, of scenes or moments in that person's life, what they were doing at the time and stuff like that. After some time, centuries into the future, I think it's fine for just the music to live on. I don't think games will even be playable. The systems will be different. But music, that comes in through your ears.
It'll stay the same.
変わらないと
Yes, it'll stay the same.
And there we have it. As always, we are waiting for messages from you, the listeners. If you have a message for Mr. Kojima, thoughts on the program, themes you want us to discuss, guests you'd like us to interview, please write in. The link to the message form can be found in the Spotify episode description. Please send us a lot of messages.
はいということで、
Yes, please do. We'll see you again on the next episode of Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure.
さようなら
Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure is a production by Spotify Studios in association with Kojima Productions and Fam Inc. Brains, Kayleen Falls. Narrator, Owen Maki. Music, Silent Poets. Visual design, Meiji Kuro. Producer, Hiro Furuki. Director, Kohei Takizawa. Executive producer at Spotify, Asami Sekine. Special thanks to Kojima Productions, Ayako Terashima, Masafumi Chiba, Miki Suga, and Aki Saito. Hosted by Hideo Kojima.
How did you like this week's episode about Ennio Morricone, the master of film soundtracks? Hideo sure seemed like he had fun talking about Mr. Morricone, didn't he? I was able to hear the love and respect he has for the genius composer. Check out the movie if you're hooked from this episode. Next week is a Brain Structure special. Highlights of the past episodes, the guests, and fun moments from the show. Maybe we'll ask him if there's going to be a season 2 of Brain Structure, so don't miss it.
Where does Hideo Kojima get his ideas? In this podcast, we take a deep dive into his brain and shed light on his creative process. Hideo Kojima presents Brain Structure.
こんにちは、小島秀夫です。ポッドキャストプログラム、Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure.
Hello, I'm Hideo Kojima, here with the podcast program Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure. And with me is my partner for this episode.
Brain's here. I'm looking forward to talking with you today.
Let's get started.
Season 1 is nearing the end, isn't it?
あ、シーズン1終わり。
Ah, season 1 is almost over? Will there be a season 2?
Will there be?
どうなんですかね。
Who knows?
Today we are, once again, recording from the studio at Kojima Productions. And since season 1 is wrapping up, why not take a look back at this season so far?
そうですね。
Yeah, sure.
Like a recap episode.
シーズン1を振り返る。
We've been doing this since September, haven't we? It's not easy doing this every week.
大変ですよね、なかなかね。
Yes, we've been doing this for quite a while. Today, you've also selected some music for us again. Is there a theme to your selection?
最近買ったアルバムで。
Yes, it's music from albums I've purchased recently. They're songs that I listened to in my youth and when I was still a student. These albums are 35, 40, 45-year deluxe anniversary albums. I like to play a selection from some of these albums. For me, it's the music of my youth, and for those listening, there are maybe some pretty nostalgic songs too. Some listeners might hear these songs and become fans. These bands and musicians have grown older just as I have, so there aren't any young artists, but I like everyone to listen to them.
Wonderful. This is one of Spotify's strengths, helping people find new music. Let's travel back in time to Mr. Kojima's youth.
青春時代。はい。
My youth.
On this Spotify podcast, premium members can listen to the songs in full, while free members can listen to 30 seconds of it. If you want to hear the full song, please consider joining as a premium member. Let's start with our first song before we look back at season 1.
1曲目。The Cure という僕大好きなバンド。
The first song is by a band I love, The Cure. This song is from midway through their career, not their early days. The album is called Wish, and it was released in 1992, so 40 years ago. This is my favorite album of theirs.
That would be 30.
30周年で
All
出
right,
ました。
30 years ago. It was their 30th anniversary. I bought the album that came with a lot of bonus items. And actually, the song that I picked out isn't my favorite song. It's my second favorite. I think everyone will recognize this song. It's called Friday, I'm in Love. Let's start with this one.
これね、1992年、ものすごい。
Back in 1992, I was actually super busy with work, but I still regularly visited record shops. And this song was playing at one of the shops I visited. I was like, oh, new song by The Cure, and I bought it.
Well, that was our first song for the episode. You're listening to Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure. Today, we're taking a look back at our first season.
はい。
Yes.
First of all, what has it been like working with Spotify to bring the Brain Structure podcast to listeners around the world? It's been about 6 months now.
もう一瞬でしたね。なん
It
か
went by so quickly.
In the blink of an eye?
はい。音楽もかけれて。
Yeah, we were able to play music and stream it in both English and Japanese. No one else is doing that.
It's amazing.
最初はもうね、どうなることか
At
と思いま
first,
したけど。
I wasn't sure it would work out, but we have been able to pull it off thanks to the staff's hard work.
The response has been good too.
そうですね。
Yes, it has.
The fans have been wonderful, and this podcast has been the subject of headlines and used as a news source too. Let's not forget about our first guest, Mr. Oshii.
これはもうね、一番好きな回ですよ。
That was my favorite episode. I still laugh when I listen to it now. I don't think many people knew that Mr. Oshii was that chatty. We even talked about doing a second episode.
What will you talk about next time?
いや、もっとやばい話。
Probably even more crazy stuff.
あれは結構いろんな人
Many people have said that to me. They've asked me to talk about even crazier stuff.
Then we can look forward to that in season 2. Let's play back just a little bit of it.
これ、でも笑い死にするかもしれません。
I might die laughing.
Let's give it a listen.
覚悟してください。電車
Well,
で聞いてる人
prepare yourselves, especially if you're listening to this on the train.
Here it is.
だからさ、デサストをさ、やってて思ったんだけど、
When I was playing Death Stranding, I realized that I was probably the worst person in the world to play Death Stranding. Because I don't want to connect with people.
だっておじさん、オフラインでやってた。
Mr. Oshii, you even went as far as to only play it offline.
オフラインでやってたから。で、確か250時間ぐらいやっ
Yeah, I played it offline. I think I played around 250 hours. And then I got frustrated and busy and I stepped away from it. Once you step away from a game, it's hard to pick it up again. But I really enjoyed the game, Death Stranding. If I were to put it into my own words, I think video games are a device to discover how people play. They never play exactly the way the creator intended. People come up with new ways to play. That's the best part of it. So when I heard that you'd play as a porter in the game, it made perfect sense to me. I've played a lot of open-world games, but I've hardly played the story part. I kindly declined all the missions too.
歩いてるだけとか
You just walk around then.
た。だから散々さ、走り回ったわけ。
Yeah, I just ran around everywhere, leaving my deliveries behind and just walking around. I tried going to the very top of mountains. I liked running along the coastline. The scenery was really unique. One thing that I thought was really cool about the world was that suddenly you could just feel the presence of death everywhere. After that thing gets defeated, it turns into a human hand-shaped mushroom. When you run around with that fetus in a pod, it's like you're straddling the line between life and death. It's always raining too, so it really feels like you're in the underworld. It really hooked me. I am interested in the story. The story is really elaborate and detailed. But I'm sorry, I only follow the story on YouTube.
これな、皆さんそういう
Please, everyone, don't do that.
あんまりおすすめできないんだけど、
I can't really recommend it either.
Mr. Oshii says that you should play offline and just watch the story on YouTube.
Most people don't finish the game, right? Maybe 50 or 60 hours? I'm pretty stingy, so I want to get the most that I can out of the game.
これすごい問題発言ですよ
So
ね。
many controversial remarks.
It was a great episode.
これネット上で駆け巡りましたから。
It made the rounds on the internet. Mr. Oshii playing the game entirely offline and just watching the story on YouTube.
He played 250 hours, but watched the whole story on YouTube. It was really interesting that he thinks games are a device for discovering how to play games.
そうですね。まあそれが本来あるべきですね。
That's how it should be. I mean, we direct some of how the game should be played, but the rest is up to the users to invent and discover.
It was a very Mr. Oshii-esque episode. Afterwards, he came to visit Kojima Productions, right?
来ていただいて。
Yes,
まあ
he visited, and we got to do the long-awaited 3D scan of him.
Which means
なんかで出るかもしれません。
He might appear somewhere. He could be someone just walking around and you run into him if you're playing offline. He won't be part of the story.
someone you meet randomly. I think Mr. Oshii said that he wanted to talk about Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, when he has another chance.
そうですね。おしいさん、ファントムペインの大ファン。
That's right, Mr. Oshii is a big fan of Phantom Pain. Apparently, he's logged hundreds of hours on that one too, but we weren't able to talk about it last time. So hopefully, we can have a second round in season 2.
That's pretty much settled then, right? I heard that things are moving forward positively. Anyways, let's get back to music again. What are we going to listen to next?
はい、これは40周年記念かな。
Yes, this was their 40th anniversary, 1982, from Dexy's Midnight Runners. They're famous for the song Come On Eileen. It's the album that includes that song, but they released a deluxe edition for the 40th anniversary, so I bought it. This is a song I like from it called Old.
この40周年記念はこのサブタイが全部ついてます。
The 40th anniversary album has a comment on all the songs.
As it should have sounded in 2022. So it was probably remastered, and they're trying to say this is how it should have sounded.
これのオールド版ですね、これ。
This version of Old. There's also a 3-disc edition, I think, with a lot of bonus content.
I see. Please check it out. Also, please give it a listen on Spotify.
Spotify もありますからね、この40周年も。
And Spotify has the 40th edition version too.
Yes, it does. As well as The Cure, which we listened to earlier. You're listening to Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure. Today, we're taking a look back at our first season. Next, let's talk about the 2022 hit film Nope by Jordan Peele.
Nope.
Nope.
懐かしいですね、それ。
Saying that brings back memories.
I think you wanted that word to trend for a while.
いやいや。
No.
Nope and RRR could have taken the prize for Trending Words of the Year award. And you even had a conversation with Jordan Peele himself. Let's remember back and take a listen.
I played a Metal Gear Solid 2, a character, and pardon me if you've done more with this character, but it's one that has stuck out in my mind as something of particular genius. And I think you might know who I'm talking about. It's Fortune, the character called Fortune. And I remember that being a really profound character to ever see in gaming, but it's stuck with me in an impactful way. Somebody who wanted to die and couldn't, and that was the problem. That was the violence and the threat that they possessed was this tragic one. And so I just wanted to say how much I love that character.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you so much. Well, the idea of her came about when I was thinking about luck and how a person's degree of happiness is the same throughout one's life. Of course, there's misfortune too. But I began to think that the amount of luck in a person's life is all the same. So, Fortune, the character, has all the luck in the world while on the battlefield and ends up using all of her luck there. So, in normal day-to-day life, she is struck by misfortunes. What I wanted to say was, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who think to themselves, I'm really unhappy right now. Maybe you were born into poverty or you don't have any very nice parents. But if you think that maybe everyone's fortune level is the same, you can feel a little better. And that's why I made that character. No matter what country you were born in, what ethnicity, what household, everyone is different, but everyone's total sum of fortune is the same. So don't give up. That's the message I wanted to convey through this character. I'm happy you asked.
So Jordan Peele really liked the character that you made, Mr. Kojima.
これはツイッターで
We followed each other on Twitter and had talked online just a bit. We only met for the first time the day of recording, but we became friends after about 5 minutes of talking.
That is an amazing thing.
たまにそういう人いるんですよね。はい。
Sometimes you meet people like that. When I visited LA recently, he showed me his studio and we got to know each other even better. We talked about working on something together at some point.
What will you make?
ちょっとね、これから。
That's for the future. He has his own studio just like me. He doesn't work alone. He has staff that he pays salaries to. That's something we have in common.
So you think you will really be able to collaborate on something then?
なんかできると思う。
I think we can. He's a really smart guy.
Another example of how brain structure was able to deepen a friendship.
ブレインストラクチャーのおかげで
We might be able to make something thanks to this podcast with the tagline, presented by Brain Structure.
That would be great.
僕と彼は背景は違うにしても
Even though our backgrounds are different, as fellow creators, we have a similar perspective. So it's like we share a common language. It's easy to communicate with him.
Wow. So you have a common understanding without words?
そうです。一言言うと理解してくれるので。
Yes, to put it simply, he gets me. There aren't a lot of people like that out there. We don't have a language barrier. It's the same with Nicolas Refn.
That's great. So perhaps in season 2, or in another future season, we'll be able to reuse this sound bit talking about how this podcast initiated your project together. I'm definitely looking forward to that.
はいはい。シーズン2みんな聞きたいって。
Yes, yes. Everyone needs to push for a second season.
Everyone listening, please send in your messages right away.
どこに送るんですか？
Where would they send them?
In the message form of the Spotify episode description.
役員様みたいな。
Like to the board members of Spotify?
Well, if they send it using the message form, the people at Spotify will definitely see it, and the message will reach us too. Anyways, let's go for another song.
1982年。
This is from the 1982 album Avalon, the last album released by Roxy Music. I also bought Brian Ferry's solo album Taxi, which also had its 40th anniversary version. It came out on LP, not on a CD. This is a pretty famous song, so I think all of you would recognize it. But I want everyone to know more about Roxy.
The CD jacket is cool too, right?
ね。まあでも後期のブライアン・フェリーはこういう歌い
It
方です
is.
けど。
Anyways, this is how Brian Ferry sounded near the end, and it's totally different from when he started. When Brian Eno was still in the band, there was a more punk vibe to it. Anyways, from the album Avalon, here is More Than This.
You just listened to More Than This from Roxy Music. This was a hit song.
そうですね。はい。
Ah, yes, yes, it was.
Did you listen to a lot of Roxy music in your youth?
うん、そうですね。まあ僕結構後半なんですよ。
Yes, I did. But I discovered them in their later years after they had shifted more towards pop. Apparently, the fans weren't very pleased about the direction.
Really?
ストラングラーズとかも結構後期。
Same thing with the Stranglers, too. They turned to pop music in their later years. But I guess that's just what the music scene was in that age.
I see. Well, let's continue to reminisce. This time with the Indian master, Mr. S.S. Rajamouli.
はい。RRRR!
Yes, R, R, R. I think this will probably get an Academy Award.
It certainly feels like it.
行きますね。肩車みたい
It will. They'll get on everyone's shoulders. If he gets an award, I want him to come out on someone's shoulder.
If you watch the movie, you'll understand. Let's play a bit from your conversation with him.
Okay.
Mr. Rajamouli, have you ever thought about designing a game? Do you have any interest in anything like that? Or have any inspirations from seeing Mr. Kojima's work?
I wanted to, but then I realized game development is not just writing a story. Writing a story is a small part of it. You need to understand a lot more about game engineering. What are the things that you do, what you do not do. It's not simple as just sitting and writing. It's such a long creative process, and I thought I can't do this, but I get I see the game cinematics a lot. One that differentiates Kojima-san's game cinematics from others is the hard-hitting emotions that makes you involved with the characters very, very quickly. So that's one thing I noticed that is quite different, that differentiates him and other game developers.
技術的なことは僕が。
Thank you. I can take care of technical aspects. So if you're ever interested, let me know.
If you can take me as an assistant, I would happy to join.
いやいやいやいや。僕肩車。
Well, I will carry you on my shoulders.
It seems like something really fun could be created from the two of you.
うん、いやもうそりゃそうですよ。
Oh yeah, for sure. It'll be like RRR and H for Hideo. So RRR, HHH, or RH, RH, RH. We should call it RH Games.
うんねえ、ラジャマウリ監督の喋り方が
The way Mr. Rajamouli talks is very cute.
Yes, it is.
あの人もあの時初めて会ったんですけど。
So that was actually my first time meeting him too.
But you guys really hit it off.
Yes, we did.
Hopefully, he will get an Academy Award.
そう、絶対なんか。
I think he will definitely get something. It makes me so happy that it became a big hit. I hope he gets an award.
It was a wonderful piece of work.
だからあれを見た日本の
I want Japanese creators to follow in his footsteps and work hard. It doesn't matter what country you're from.
Yes, it doesn't matter if you are from Hollywood or not, right? What about a collaboration between RRR and HHH?
その後、
I haven't met him since then, but I feel like we could get something going if we meet again.
I heard that you scanned him, right?
スキャンしました。
I did scan him.
Are you going to stick him in the game somewhere, getting a shoulder ride?
うん、肩車して出てくると思います。
Yeah, he'll probably show up getting a shoulder ride. If you see someone on a shoulder, you'll know it's him. Maybe I'll be the one carrying him in the CG.
Mr. Kojima, you've been scanned too?
僕は前にしてますね。
Yeah, I scanned myself the last time around. Not this time, though. In the last game, I was the one that came out of the tar. It might be good to put Mr. Rajamouli on top of that. But maybe that's a little too obvious. Not enough twist.
Mr. Rajamouli seemed interested in making a video game, right?
そうだ、
That's right. And he made that movie about the fly, right? He likes working with CG quite a bit.
It seems like something could work out here.
はい。
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
I think everyone would love for that to become a reality. Let's see what happens from here on out. Should we listen to another song now?
フランツの曲なんですけど、
Yes, this next song is by Franz Ferdinand. This one isn't really that old. It's from their first album, which was released in 2004. They recently released a box set, so I bought it. He was going to come to Japan, or he already came?
Yes, he already came.
で、僕昔ライブよ。
I used to go to a lot of their concerts. But the reason I chose this song isn't just because I recently bought the box set, but because it was recently used as the opening theme song to the cyberpunk anime Edge Runners, so it's gotten popular again. The song we're going to play is called This Fire. This is the original version, not the cyberpunk version.
これでも18周年ですね。
It's the 18th anniversary of this song.
18 years. That's an odd number. It's not 20 years?
ちゃうんですね。
No, it's not 20. It's a 5 CD set, and there's actually a bonus track. I have so many of the same things, but I end up buying stuff when there's a bonus track. I also bought one that came with a tote bag.
There's one with a tote bag?
はい。で、去年出たベスト。
Yeah, and last year, the Greatest Hits album came with a t-shirt, so I bought that one too.
So you like collecting goods?
いやー、集めてるわけじゃなんかついてるのが。
I wouldn't say I'm collecting them, but if there's some sort of bonus item, I think my generation is just materialistic. I want my albums to come with something. Same with Blu-rays that come with exclusive footage or a pamphlet or liner notes or...
I see. Will you include some bonus items with your next work?
DS のつけたいですね。
Oh, Death Stranding 2? I would like to.
You want to make a version with some sort of bonus items?
もう出したいですね。でも出てた
Yeah, I would want to do that. But a lot of these are digital these days, like special items in the game. But I don't want to do that. I'd rather have something real, something you can touch.
What about an octopus?
タコルー
Octopus Lou?
Yes, Octopus Lou.
タコルーどうですかタコルー。
Ah, Octopus Lou.
Octopus Lou is pretty cute.
あ、可愛いですかあれ。
Oh, you think it's cute? We think so, but I don't know what people abroad think.
They probably think it's cute too.
まあ、ちょっと不気味具合も欲しい。
Well, I wanted it to be a little bit eerie too. We actually had a capsule toy of the BB pod, and I was thinking about making an octopus version this time. But I'm the only one that calls it Octopus Lou.
Its real name is different?
実は、
Yes, actually in the DS2 teaser, you saw Fragile, and then you have this red dude with a guitar, right? And I had thought about including Octopus Lou instead, but everyone was like, that might be tough. I thought it would be okay to use Octopus Lou anyway, but I ended up pulling back. I really did want to show it though, so I revealed it after our trailer announcement.
Yes, I saw your tweet. It was like you were giving us a little peek. Anyways, we got a bit off subject, but you just heard a song by Franz Ferdinand. You are listening to Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure. We're taking a look back at Season 1. Next, let's discuss the TGA Special, the episode where you addressed internet rumors.
あ、これもニュースになりましたね。
Oh, yes. That one made the news, didn't it?
Yes, it made the news internationally. Let's listen a bit to that conversation.
There was another big rumor that came out last year that I was sort of a part of too, and this was around a project which was codenamed Abandoned. And this was supposedly a survival horror game that was somehow maybe related to the game Silent Hill, and people somehow thought that I was involved in it, and maybe you were involved, Mr. Kojima. And I'm sure you must have heard about this, Hideo, at some point, right? When did you first hear about this supposed abandoned game?
いや、これね、最初わからなかったさ、
Well, this one I really didn't understand at first. The game is yet to be released, right? I don't think there's much he could do or say at this point, but if he releases the game, then people might understand. So, maybe he should just hurry up and release it.
出したらいいんじゃないですかね。収まると思う。
It'll die down after that. Plus, I'm not involved with it in any way. I don't know who started this rumor. I think this is fake news based off of users' wishes and hopes. But now that there's been a buzz and things have gone viral, you should take advantage of it. If you create something good and share it with everyone, they will learn the truth. I think maybe that's what you should do. Fake news is a bad thing, but now that we've both gained attention from all of this, let's boost morale and create something good. Once they have made something, the users who play it will understand it's not Silent Hill, and I'm not involved, but they will still grow to love their game. I think there's a way to turn fake news around positively.
これは結構すごいニュースになりましたよね。
This really made headlines, didn't it? After that, the people working on Abandon tweeted and said thank you, and I was like, good luck.
Did you know about that rumor before the episode?
いや、噂というか、もういっぱい来るんですよ。
A lot of rumors reach my eyes and ears, like edited collages and stuff.
So in that episode, you were finally able to address the rumors.
というか、僕がすると彼ら
Well,
に
I was worried that if I addressed the rumors, I might cause trouble for the people over at Abandon, so I kept quiet for a while. But in the end, it turned out okay. They seemed happy that I addressed the rumors directly, too.
This episode was actually proposed by you, Mr. Kojima, in order to address rumors and reveal the truth, right?
まあ、噂というか、
You can call them rumors, but if we're being honest, and I don't really like calling it out like this, there's a lot of fake news out there, and some of it is directly sent to me. On Twitter, when people are just posting stuff, I don't see it all. But when they send them to me directly, it feels like they're dropping them to me personally in my mailbox.
Yes, the tweets with the @ mark mentioning you.
それをやめてほしいな。
I really wish people would stop that. It's fine to complain, like in your own living room, but don't do it where I can hear it. I wish people would stop directing those messages at me.
Was it a good episode for you then, since you were able to address that?
ただ
I mean, yes, but as I said in that episode, there are two types of rumors, malicious ones and users' hopes. The abandoned rumors were the hopes.
Yes, they were.
ただまあ、そうとはいえ、
But even so, these messages come directly to me from all over the world. It's mentally exhausting.
You have a lot of followers, too. If you addressed everything one by one, it would be endless.
まあ、全部は見てませんけど、たまに、いや、まあ、目に入るん
Well,
ですよ。
I don't look at all of them, but if I see them, I end up reading them. And then I feel pretty down about it.
Right. Everyone, let's stop saying stuff about people online. Shall we listen to another song?
はい。これ40周年じゃ39
Yes,
周年。
this one wasn't a 40th anniversary album. It's actually 39. Planet P Project's album from 1983. I think there might be 2 discs. It's not really a band, it's a project. At the time, they were a big hit. I think the project name was inspired by Planet P from Highline's book, Starship Troopers. Their song, Why Me, was a big hit. I bought the album recently, even though I already had the 10-inch single LP. It inspired Death Stranding 2's Who Am I, Where Am I, How Come, and Why Me campaign.
There is a Why Me logo, isn't there?
ロゴでやってて、Why me?
So when working on it, and every time I use Why Me, I'm reminded of it. And well, Sam has the habit of asking why me, like whenever he's asked to go on a job. So I wanted to listen to this song with everyone. Here's the song, Why Me, by Planet P Project.
この何十周年記
If you
念版
buy the anniversary album, the extended version of this song is also on it, which is the version that was on the 10-inch LP I bought at the time of the original release.
I see. So the long version?
これシャレですね。
Yeah, it's really cool.
So when you see the Death Stranding 2 Why Me image, you'll always think of this song.
そう思い出す。
Yes, you will.
Conversely, now when people hear this song, They may think of Death Stranding too.
僕はそうですけどね。
That's true for me, at least.
So everyone, please add it to your playlist. You can listen to it on Spotify.
ブレインストラクチャー。
And now it's about time to wrap up.
Yes, thank you so much. This time, we took a look back at our previous episodes. What are your thoughts on this first season, Mr. Kojima?
なんかいろいろ無茶やってきましたね。
It was pretty crazy, huh?
There were a lot of great episodes, especially the conversations with other creatives.
対談ね。
The talks just sort of happened out of the blue, too.
It was your first time meeting many of those people, right?
そうですね。はい。
Yes, it was.
And you connected with some of those people when you visited LA.
まあそういう場にもしたいですよね。
Yes, I really want to do that again.
Are there a lot of people you want to invite on the show in season 2?
会いたい人はいっぱいいますね。
Yeah, there are a lot of people I'd love to meet. And there are a lot of famous people that said they would gladly make an appearance. And of course, some of them already did. But it's hard to schedule and whatnot. And when the talks are with people who are abroad, we have to do it over Zoom, which isn't ideal.
Face-to-face is better.
それがいいです。
Yes, it is. If I could do it like when I visited LA, that would be great.
Or maybe when they visit Japan.
ただ
But you know, we did a video version of the podcast recently. I wonder which is better.
I'd like to hear from the listeners. Watching a video is also quite fun.
いや映像を見た楽しみって何？
You're just watching my face, though. What's the fun in that? I'm not an idol or anything.
What are you talking about? But seriously, when you listen to somebody talking, sometimes you want to see their face to understand their expressions like their smiles.
なんかね、チェックしたら腹出てるなとかそんなんばっかり思います。
But when I checked the footage, all I saw was my belly and stuff like that.
That's what you're looking at? That's not important.
だからまあこれはちょっと。
Anyways, I wonder what direction season 2 will take. Recently, video podcasts seem to be the trend.
I think maybe it's both. In the US, there are a lot of people that only listen to podcasts.
そうなんですか。ポッドキャスターズ。
Oh, really? Are there people whose official job title is a podcaster?
Radio DJs are even moving over to podcast. And since America is a car-centric society, a lot of people can't watch and listen at the same time. That's why audio content is so important.
なんかね、映像を。
Some people will even play audio from videos and not watch the actual video.
Yes, that's right. Like YouTube videos.
そうそう、日本。
Yes, in Japan it's different, but I guess in the US it's because people drive cars everywhere.
That's true. But even in Japan when you're riding on a train, and especially packed trains, you can't easily watch videos on your phone. So people want the audio content too.
そうですね。ただ音声じゃなくて。
That's true. And if we quit the audio and switch to video, it would be hard for Taki.
Taki! That's the name of the show's director.
いや、
It'll be hard to do all the editing.
But he knows how to edit video too, so I guess it just depends on what everybody wants.
映像だとどこで撮るんですかね。
Where would we record the video though?
There are tons of places to record at Kojima Productions.
ないですよ。
No, not really.
The green screen room, that Hollywood style room.
緑の部屋でなんか場所。
We could record it with the green screen and edit it to look like we're in Paris or London.
Yes, and every time we could be like, where are we going today? And the Hollywood room has a mirror all the way to the ceiling, right?
ちょっと僕は声だけがいいです。
But I think I prefer just our voices.
Oh, really?
なんか Spotify の皆さんは。
I got the feeling that people at Spotify prefer video though.
Well, maybe we can do both.
映像になるとちょっと凝りたくなるじゃない
I think with video, we're going to end up wanting to do more. And then, where will we stop?
You're thinking like a creator. Well, we would like to hear everyone's opinions on this, so please give us your feedback. The link to the message form is in the Spotify episode description. Should we listen to one last song as we end the show?
はい、ですね、最後はですね。
Yes. For our last song, I would like to play a song from an album released this year celebrating the 50th anniversary of Mike Oldfield's song, Tubular Bells from the movie The Exorcist. The song Tubular Bells is performed by a symphonic orchestra, and I bought the album. However, there's another song on the album that I love called Moonlight Shadow. It's not performed by Maggie, but by a different lady, and it's really good. So I'd like to play this as we end the episode. In commemoration of 50 years, here's Mike Oldfield's Moonlight Shadow.
次回の、Hideo Kojima Presents.
See you again on next week's episode of Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure.
さようなら
Today's episode was a Brain Structure Season 1 recap. Looking back, we sure had a lot of amazing guests. Mr. Oshii, Mr. Jordan Peele, Mr. Rajamouli, just to name a few. There isn't a podcast like this anywhere else. I think I'll go back to the start and listen again from episode 1. And don't forget, you can send a message to our mailbox. On the next episode, we may be joined by another special guest. Who could it be? Stay tuned.